Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. And our top story tonight on Gravitas is on the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine has fired US-supplied long-range missiles into Russia a day after the Biden administration permitted such attacks. What does the latest move mean for the war is the question. Will it take a nuclear turn? How will Vladimir Putin respond? We decode this and more in just a bit. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. With two critical undersea cables severed in 2 days, we tell you how this is becoming a flashpoint and a worrying situation. As Hong Kong jails 47 pro-democracy activists, we zoom into how China is crushing dissent. To what length would you go to stay young? We tell you how a tech millionaire's quest for eternal youth went wrong and what he had to say about the anti-aging experiment. All this and more coming up tonight. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about the Russia-Ukraine war, a day after accusing US President Joe Biden of risking World War III with his U-turn on long-range weapons for Ukraine. Russia has revised the country's nuclear strategy. You heard that right. 2 days after Biden's decision, Russia's nuclear strategy has been updated. It basically states that Moscow will be viewing aggression from any non-nuclear country, but in collaboration with a nuclear power, as a coordinated assault on Moscow. In fact, the Kremlin started this new wave of nuclear saber-rattling today, indicating that the updated military doctrine would potentially lower the threshold for the first use of nuclear weapons. And what's more, Russia has also started manufacturing mobile bomb shelters. The question is World War III now inevitable? Is Russia gearing up for a nuclear escalation? Let's start off with the latest. Have a look at these visuals on your screen. What do you reckon this is? Well, it's a bomb shelter. But you see, this is no ordinary bomb shelter. These bomb shelters basically are mobile and radiation resistant, and Russia has started producing them en masse. According to Russia's Emergency Ministries Research Institute, these bomb shelters can be used to protect against a variety of man-made threats as well as natural disasters, including radiation and shock waves. In fact, they call it the Cub-M shelter, K-U-B-M shelter. They look like a reinforced shipping container, but they can actually protect against radiation reportedly, debris, fires. They can also be deployed anywhere in Russia's northern permafrost. One standard shelter can accommodate 54 people, but additional modules can be added. But why does Russia really need radiation-resistant bomb shelters now? Could it be because Ukraine has, for the first time, started firing the American long-range missiles into Russia? That's right. A day after Washington gave its permission, Ukraine basically wasted no time. And on Tuesday morning, Kiev's forces fired attack AIMs on Russia's Bryansk region. According to Russia, 5 missiles were shot down, 1 damaged, with its fragments causing a fire at a military facility in the region. And the strike basically represents the first time the long-range missiles have been used on Russia's internationally recognized country. Responding to the attacks, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the attack was a clear signal that the West wanted to escalate the Ukraine conflict. Listen in.
The fact that ATACMS was used repeatedly in the Bryansk region tonight, of course, is a signal that they want to escalate the conflict, and it is impossible to use these high-tech missiles without the Americans. Putin has said this many times.
After all, Russia is the one that has updated its nuclear doctrine. Just 2 days after Biden's arms decision, Moscow updated its doctrine, which basically allows Moscow to consider aggression from any non-nuclear state, but with the participation of a nuclear country, as a joint attack on Russia. On Tuesday, the Kremlin said that the revised military doctrine would, in theory, lower the bar to first use of nuclear weapons. Nuclear deterrence is a pillar of Russian military doctrine, but the revision appears to broaden the definition of what would be considered aggression against Russia. The revised doctrine is clearly meant to send out a strong signal to Ukraine's Western backers. You see, it's supposed to remind the West about the possible consequences of providing more sophisticated and far-reaching weaponry to Ukraine. But Russia has also escalated its campaign against Ukraine. In recent days, Russia has blanketed the country with drone and missile attacks. Attacks that seem aimed in part at destroying civilian energy infrastructure as the winter approaches. Russia's doctrine change follows a consistent pattern of threatening rhetoric, now 1,000 days old. Still, the revision of the nuclear doctrine adds a new level of credibility to Russian threats of escalation, particularly as the new administration under Donald Trump prepares to take office in Washington. But what does all of this mean? Does Russia expect the Ukraine conflict to turn nuclear? All signs at this point are pointing towards this. You see, the war in Ukraine is entering what some officials say could be its final, most dangerous phase. Russian forces have advanced at their fastest pace on the battleground since the early weeks of the conflict in 2022. But most importantly, the announcement came just as the Biden administration agreed to allow Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles deep into Russia. Is this Russia sending out a message to Washington with this decision? Remember, on Monday, the Kremlin called Biden's decision a reckless decision. The Kremlin also cautioned that the move would draw the U.S. directly into the conflict with Russia. You see, since the Ukraine war started, Russia has lowered the threshold under which it would consider using nuclear weapons. And with the new decree, it essentially restates and makes official the terms set out in September's proposed revision, which, remember, said that Moscow would consider any assault on it supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. It also specifies that an attack on its ally Belarus would be seen on an equal footing to Russia. And in addition to updating its nuclear policy, Russia has increased its missile production. New satellite images showing significant expansions at 5 facilities where solid fuel missile engines are manufactured. And this suggests that the Kremlin intends to substantially enhance its missile production amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. The sites are in the Altai Republic in Siberia, Rostov in southern Russia, outside Moscow, and St. Petersburg, and in Perm in western Russia. Meanwhile, its forces have continued to make advances on the battlefield. On November 18, the Russian Defense Ministry released a video claiming that its forces had taken control of the village of Novoleksivka in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region, advancing village by village. Russia, since August, has recorded its fastest gains in Ukraine since the first year of the war. While the world wonders what Putin's next move might be, the answer is already coming from the front lines. Russia is fully prepared and willing to remind the West about the consequences that it can face if the red lines, the so-called red lines, continue to be crossed. Although the new administration of US President-elect Donald Trump may change the Kremlin's response to Biden's decision to authorize Ukraine's use of the missiles, remember, Trump, who will assume office in just over 2 months, has vowed to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Even though Trump is yet to make a statement regarding Biden's decision, his son, Donald Trump Jr., has criticized it, saying, I'm quoting, "The military-industrial complex appears to want to ensure that World War III is on the horizon before my father can establish peace and protect lives," quote unquote. After 1,000 days of conflict, will there be peace in Ukraine, or will the Biden administration further aggravate the situation and trigger World War III before Biden leaves the White House? Shifting focus for now, Canadian Minister Dominic LeBlanc met with leaders of a Sikh group that advocates the demand for separate Khalistan, the meeting coming at a time when a broader diplomatic crisis between Canada and India is underway. India repeatedly accusing Canada, remember, of allowing pro-Khalistan groups to operate freely within its borders, raising concerns over the security of its diplomats and the Indian diaspora. LeBlanc is the Minister for Public Safety, Democratic Institutions and Intergovernmental Affairs in the Justin Trudeau-led government. Taking to the platform X after the meeting, LeBlanc wrote, I'm quoting, "Today I met with the leadership of the World Sikh Organization to discuss community safety. Adding, law enforcement and governments are working together to ensure the safety of the Sikh community in Canada." The World Sikh Organization claims to promote and protect the interests of Sikhs across the world. WSO, in fact, had helped Trudeau's Liberal Party campaign before the federal polls in 2015. However, a section of Liberals belonging to the Sikh Punjabi diaspora labeled WSO as an extremist organization. WSO was formed in 1984 after Operation Blue Star in India. Didar Singh Benz, who played a key role in setting up of WSO, had also raised the demand for Khalistan. The present leadership also advocated for a separate Khalistan and also supported unsubstantiated claims of the Indian government's involvement in the killing of separatist Sikh leaders on Canadian soil. India-Canada ties have hit a new low after Trudeau publicly accused India of being behind the killing of Sikh secessionist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India rejected Trudeau's allegations, accused the Canadian government of harboring Khalistani extremists. In response, India expelled several Canadian diplomats and recalled its own ambassador from Ottawa. Shifting focus now to West Asia, where Lebanon-based Hezbollah has claimed to have launched an attack on the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. According to reports, several explosions rocked Tel Aviv, in which one got killed and at least 5 people were injured. And confirming this on Monday, the Israeli army has said that Tel Aviv came under heavy attack, with several advanced missiles striking the city. This has caused significant damage and widespread power outages. On your screen now are visuals of sirens blaring, rockets flying into the night sky over Tel Aviv. According to reports, in fact, Hezbollah launched a 30-rocket barrage targeting Israeli border cities. The rocket parts hit the city of Ramat Gan near Tel Aviv as part of the attack, which began early morning. In fact, as per authorities, a rocket struck a multi-story building in the town of Shafaram, killing 1 and leaving several injured. What's more, emergency personnel can be seen evacuating buildings and clearing the debris after part of the rocket tore into homes.
As you can see behind me, a short while ago, projectile impact landed right here in the city of Bnei Brak, a residential area with lots of civilians around us. We're talking about multiple impact sites. Right now, as we know, there are 4 injured in various conditions according to medical sources.
Not just that, footage emerging from the sites showing Israeli missile systems failing to intercept one of the missiles that made direct impact, reportedly near a mall in the city, which again is situated in a densely populated area. Israeli police, in fact, have confirmed it to be a direct hit. A bus was also reportedly hit by a missile, and a fire broke out in the city of Bnei Brak. The conflict between Israel and Hezbollah has been escalating for more than a year now. Both sides have been trading fire, and the recent attacks came in the aftermath of the recent Israeli strike on Beirut that killed Hezbollah's media chief.
Today we've had just now very constructive talks with Speaker Berry, and we have continued to narrow the gaps through the discussions over the last few weeks. And specifically today, we continued to significantly narrow the gaps.
Not just that, over the past few weeks, Israeli airstrikes and drone attacks have claimed the lives of dozens in Lebanon. These have destroyed buildings and key infrastructure. Hezbollah had sworn revenge and launched its retaliation in what is known as its fire for fire strategy, which basically involves attacking both military and civilian areas. On Tuesday, U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein arrived in Beirut for talks with officials on a truce plan.
Today we've had just now very constructive talks with Speaker Berry, and we have continued to narrow the gaps through the discussions over the last few weeks, and specifically today we continued to significantly narrow the gaps.
A top Lebanese official, in fact, told Reuters on Monday that Lebanon and Hezbollah have agreed to a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire with Israel, with some comments on the content, describing the effort as the most serious yet to end the fighting. The question is, what really lies ahead for West Asia? We will have to wait and watch for that answer. Even as tensions between Russia and the West teeter on the brink of nuclear escalation, a hybrid warfare campaign is already underway, specifically under the sea. 2 undersea internet cables in the Baltic Sea have mysteriously been severed within 2 days. In fact, Germany has already labeled this incident as sabotage, while U.S. allies point fingers at Russia for the disruption of the cables that connect 2 NATO countries. Who is behind this? We don't know for sure. However, the sabotage of the Baltic cables has become the latest flashpoint in the ongoing conflict between Russia and the NATO. Let's get to the details. According to telecommunications company Telia Lithuania, a communications cable between Lithuania and Sweden was cut on Sunday morning at around 10 a.m. local time. The company's monitoring systems could tell there was a cut because of the traffic disruption. In fact, they said that the cause was likely physical damage to the cable itself. Speaking to news outlets, the company confirmed that the internet traffic disruption was not caused by equipment failure, but by physical damage to the fiber optic cable. And then another cable linking Finland and Germany was also disrupted. According to Cinia, the state-controlled Finnish company that runs the link, the Sea Lion cable, which is the only direct connection of its kind between Finland and Central Europe, by the way, was severed. And this particular cable spans nearly 1,200 kilometers alongside other key pieces of infrastructure, including gas pipelines and power cables. So what or who damaged the cable? How exactly did this even happen? It's unclear. What exactly caused the fault in the Sea Lion cable is still being investigated, so we have to wait for that answer. A physical inspection has not yet been conducted, but you see, the sudden outage implied that the cable was cut by an outside force. The area that was disrupted along the finished German cable is roughly 60 to 65 miles away from the Lithuanian-Swedish cable that was cut. Incidentally, the two incidents came as two of the affected countries, Sweden and Finland, updated their guidance to citizens on how to survive a war. Millions of households in the Nordic countries will be given booklets with instructions on how to prepare for the effects of military conflicts, communications outages, and power cuts. Remember, both Sweden and Finland joined the NATO in the last 2 years, right after Russia-Ukraine war started. In a joint statement on Monday evening, the foreign ministers of Finland and Germany said that they were deeply concerned. They also raised the possibility of hybrid warfare. The joint statement read, and I'm quoting here, "The fact that such an incident immediately raises suspicions of intentional damage speaks volumes about the volatility of our times." A thorough investigation is underway. Our European security is not only under threat from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, but also from hybrid warfare by malicious actors, quote unquote. The incident has once again sparked fears of undersea sabotage. In fact, recently the US, remember, had warned that it had detected increased Russian military activity around key undersea cables. In the past, US officials have pointed the finger towards Russia for potential sabotage operations on these critical pieces of infrastructure. Russia has, for its part, rubbished Western allegations. Remember last year, US allies Finland and Estonia blamed Russia for an October 2023 incident that damaged an undersea gas pipeline between the two countries. But an investigation later established that a Chinese cargo ship's anchor had been responsible. Further, no one has taken responsibility for the blast that disabled Nord Stream pipelines, which once delivered natural gas from Russia to Germany. 3 out of 4 tubes were damaged by sabotage in September 2022. Investigative journalist Semur Hesh has pointed the finger at the US and Norway, while several Western newspapers have claimed that a group of Ukrainians carried out the bombing with or without Kiev's knowledge or approval. Shifting focus, a Hong Kong court has jailed 45 defendants convicted in its largest trial under its sweeping national security law, the same law that Beijing imposed to thwart a pro-democracy movement there back in 2020. Our next report telling you more about how China is crushing dissent.
Hong Kong is one of China's wealthiest and densely populated cities. Over 7 million residents reside in the former British colony. China promised Hong Kong its freedom when it took administrative control back in 1997. In 2020, Beijing imposed a harsh national security law on the city. At the time, China shut down the city's last pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily. Over 500 policemen raided the newspaper headquarters and arrested journalists. This was back in 2021, when Hong Kong's hopes of being a democracy started fading away. In a massive crackdown this week, 45 former lawmakers and activists were sentenced to 4 to 10 years in prison. They have been prosecuted under the same national security law for their roles in an unofficial primary election. Prosecutors said they aimed to paralyze Hong Kong's government. They wanted to win a legislative majority to block government budgets indiscriminately. Judges called legal scholar Benny Tai the mastermind of the legislative orchestration. Benny has received the longest sentence of 10 years in jail. The rest either pleaded guilty or were found guilty of conspiracy to commit subversion. Families of the sentenced activists have expressed distress.
The whole trial is unfair because what they have done is only, to do what the basic law had already laid down, that it is their right to put pressure to the administration to let them respond to the majority of Hong Kong people.
Regarding today's ruling, I would not say it is too little or too much, because today's sentencing for the 600,000 people who took part in the primary election, for the 2 million people who participated in the anti-extradition movement, today's sentencing is already suppression.
Judges said the activists' plans to effect change through the unofficial primary would have undermined the government's authority. Hong Kong's government said the punishment reflects on the severity of the crime.
We believe that this sentencing reflects the severity of the crime and also demonstrates that crimes endangering national security must be strictly punished.
The move has sparked criticism from across the globe.
We are gravely concerned by the use of these security laws and the breadth to criminalise conduct protected by human rights to freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association.
We are concerned by reports of Jimmy Lai's deterioration health in prison. You raised the Chinese embassy building in London when we spoke on the telephone.
China has slammed criticism from Western countries, terming their pitch double standards.
Some individual Western countries ignore the fact that they use relevant judicial procedures to uphold their own national security, while also arbitrarily condemning Hong Kong courts that implement the national security law. This kind of behavior seriously desecrates and tramples on the spirit of the rule of law.
And our next story is about India and China. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, met his Chinese counterpart on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. On November 19, taking to the platform X, Dr. S. Jaishankar said that both sides noted progress in the recent disengagement in the border areas. What's more, both the leaders also exchanged views on what should be the next steps in the India-China bilateral ties. Let's just get you some context here. Following a series of negotiations to resolve the border row, on October 21, both sides had reached an agreement. And the Indian and Chinese militaries completed the disengagement exercise then in Demchok and Depsang in eastern Ladakh. In fact, experts see the border agreement as an important diplomatic breakthrough when it comes to the relationship between the two sides. Remember, back in 2020, tensions between India and China skyrocketed following the Galwan Valley clash. And coming back to the talks that took place between Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart, both sides have been reported as saying that deployment of troops along the LAC is being maintained. Each side currently has around 50,000 to 60,000 troops along the LAC. The talks also emphasized on how the focus must now shift to de-escalation of the overall situation to restore peace and normalcy. Both the foreign ministers also discussed the resumption of direct flights between India and China, as well as restarting the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra pilgrimage. That's not all. The talks also entailed a data sharing on trans-border rivers, as well as media exchanges to be part of the bilateral dialogue. Remember, during the meeting held between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping in the Russian city of Kazan, Prime Minister Modi stressed on how trust is the foundation for the relations between two countries, and the latest talks between Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart seem to reflect a similar stance. In fact, Dr. S. Jaishankar noted that India and China have both differences and convergences. He said that India has been constructively working towards cooperation summit after summit, be it BRICS, SCO, and now the G20. He also talked about India's commitment to a multipolar world and thus a multipolar Asia. He emphasized on a foreign policy which is independent of external influences. Meanwhile, Wang Yi noted that India-China relations have a particular salience in world politics and that a forward-looking approach is being harbored by both sides. And we now focus on a crisis that affects us directly. The killer smog in Delhi skies. Breathing has become dangerous. Hospitals are seeing an increase in patients with breathing difficulties. Protests are on the rise. Promises from leaders remain unfulfilled. Delhi is gasping for clean air while politicians engage in a blame game. How did we get to this point? The answer is as complex as the question itself. Let's just start off with the latest developments. For the second consecutive day, the air quality in the Indian national capital remained in the severe plus category. On November 19, Delhiites woke up to a city shrouded in smog, reducing visibility and worsening air pollution to alarmingly high levels. Air pollution of many other cities and towns in northern India also being in the severe or severe plus zone. In fact, according to the data, the AQI reading, the air quality index reading, continues to max out at 500 at many of the observation stations in New Delhi. A day ago, the authorities introduced restrictions on vehicle movement, construction activities. Schools and educational institutes were told to conduct classes online. But local media reports saying that the strict measures to mitigate high pollution have hurt production at more than 3.4 million micro, small and medium enterprises in the nearby states of Punjab, Haryana. One of the factors contributing to the severe pollution in Delhi is crop burning, stubble burning. According to reports, Punjab witnesses the season's maximum single-day spike in farm fires at 1,251 on Tuesday, as Punjab's average air quality index or AQI continued to hover in moderate to poor category. The state saw a maximum single-day spike in farm fires. It happens during the ongoing Kharif harvest season. Crop residue fires set by farmers are illegal and blamed every year for blanketing northern India with toxic smog. Still, it continues to be in practice in both India and neighboring Pakistan. Farmers say they have a small window to clear the earth between the paddy harvest and sowing the winter wheat crop. Efforts to persuade them to use machines to chop the stubble or chemicals to dissolve them have failed. They say that machines are expensive and chemicals have low success rate. And as a result, farmers, short on time, burn the crop waste despite the toxic smog that it produces. Sure, penalties and subsidies have converted some farmers, but it's not enough to reduce pollution levels. Officials have told local media, in fact, that the fires had reduced this year. But data reveals that the average farm fire numbers were on a relatively higher side when compared to the incidents before October 26. But stubble burning is only one of the contributing factors, remember, to air pollution across India's northern region. Toxic smog that is blanketing Delhi is also made up of smoke, construction dust, vehicle emissions. As the AQI drops, artificial rain idea has also been thrown in the mix, but will it really curb the crisis? Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai has said that he has written to the Union Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav 4 times. He has sought the centre's urgent clearances reportedly for cloud seeding to artificially induce rainfall that could help combat the pollution crisis. Meanwhile, Delhi hospitals are seeing a spike in patients with respiratory issues. Delhi Environment Minister has also ordered the Health Department to form a special task force. It will basically handle medical emergencies related to pollution. A day before the Supreme Court had reprimanded the authorities for delaying enforcing anti-pollution measures, the Apex Court of India has said that the measures will remain in place even if the AQI slightly improves. Experts say that the thick smog layer engulfing the city can only be broken by either wind or rain. A political blame game is also underway. During an awareness-cum-mask distribution program, the Delhi BJP president slammed the ruling Aam Aadmi Party and alleged government inaction. Former Union Minister Vijay Goyal also staged a protest in the national capital, blaming the ruling Aam Aadmi Party government for failing to help the people. The question is, will protests, the political blame game, solve the crisis? Can emergency measures fix the problem? Clean air is our fundamental right. Will it take a crisis to worsen to see real action is the question. "47 people have gone on newborn baby gang trial in Turkey in connection with an alleged scam in which newborns were transferred between hospitals for profits. According to the prosecutors, doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers are responsible for the deaths of at least 10 infants. The defendants are accused of making false diagnoses to transfer babies to 19 private hospitals where the infants were kept in intensive care units for a long period of time, sometimes even for unnecessary treatments. In other cases, babies who were in need of specialized care did not receive the treatment that they needed. The indictment revealed basically that at least 10 babies died as a result of negligence and improper treatment over several years.
When we went, they told us the baby was in critical condition. It was on a Tuesday. When we went, they told us the baby had died. They gave us a medical report that said the baby had died of natural causes. But apparently, that wasn't the case. We learned just last month that wasn't the case. I want to press charges. I want justice to be served. My baby was born after 8 years of fertility treatments.
The aim was to secure security payment of $230 per day, which is granted to private hospitals treating newborns on top of the fee charged to the parents. The profits were then shared between them.
We, as the Ministry of Health and Healthcare Professionals, do not call this a newborn gang. We call them gangs with no sense of humanity. We call them bad apple operations because we know that these people do not have human values, let alone be healthcare professionals. And we have fought against such gangs and people who engage in such wrong behavior, and we will continue to do so.
Yanlış davranışlar içinde olan insanlarla mücadelemizi yaptık, yapmaya da devam edeceğiz. Meanwhile, as the trial opened, dozens of people took part in a protest outside the courthouse near Istanbul, chanting, "Baby killers will be held accountable and private hospitals should be shut down." As of now, 10 hospitals have had their licenses revoked as a result of the investigation. The defendants have denied any wrongdoing. However, if found guilty, the defendants will face lengthy prison sentences for homicide through negligence and fraud. Tens of thousands of people are demonstrating against a conservative attempt to amend New Zealand's foundational treaty. As indigenous Maori haka chants echoed in Wellington, a harbourside city of the nation. According to police, around 35,000 protesters thronged the streets of the city as the energetic march made its way slowly to the parliament. Bare-chested men draped in traditional feather cloaks were joined by horse riders waving the red, white and black Maori flag. Children also took part alongside adults, bearing full-face Maori moko tattoos and clutching ceremonial wooden weapons. The protests have become more intense throughout New Zealand after a minor party in the Conservative coalition government drafted a bill to redefine the 1840 Treaty of Waitangi. Although the bill has almost no chances of passing, its mere introduction has triggered one of New Zealand's largest protests in decades. Notably, the Treaty of Waitangi, considered as New Zealand's foundational document, was an agreement signed between the British Crown and the Maori chiefs in the 1840s and is instrumental in upholding the Maori rights. The incumbent Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, has voiced his opposition to the bill, saying that it is doomed to fail when it comes to a parliamentary vote.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just want to acknowledge up front that this is a pretty significant day. As you know, our position as a National Party is unchanged. We won't be supporting the bill beyond second reading, and therefore it won't become law.
The bill was introduced in the Parliament for preliminary debate last week. However, the proceedings were derailed when 22-year-old Maori Party MP took to her feet in the chamber, ripped the bill and launched into a haka. On to China now, where on Tuesday, a man drove a car into a group of people near an elementary school. This was in China's Hunan province. Multiple students were left injured. What's more, this reportedly appears to be the third large-scale attack in the country in just a little over a week. Let's tell you what happened. The tragic incident took place outside a primary school in Changde region. As per reports, the incident took place right outside the school gate. Videos of the aftermath of the incident, shared on Chinese social media, showed young children in backpacks running, some screaming for help, while some people lay motionless on the ground. Another video showed a group of adults surrounding a man and kicking and beating him near a white car. According to a statement by the police, the driver, surnamed Huang, was arrested, and thankfully none of the victims were in a life-threatening condition. The authorities are still investigating the case and trying to determine the reason behind the incident. This comes as people in the country are still reeling from two other tragedies that took place recently. Only last week, a man drove into a crowd at a sports center in the southern city of Zhuhai, killing at least 35 people. This is being viewed as the deadliest attack in China in a decade. Last Saturday, another gruesome incident took place where a man went on a stabbing rampage at his former school in the eastern city of Wuxi. This killed at least 8 people. The spate of high-profile violence in China in recent times has raised fears about public safety. Authorities saying in the case of the previous 2 incidents, the police suggested that the perpetrators were unhappy with their financial situations. And as the recent incident is still under investigation, if that's a case of accident or a deliberate act remains to be seen. On Tuesday, as per a statement, the Supreme People's Procuratorate, China's top prosecuting body, held a meeting promising to maintain social stability and to punish major vicious crimes severely, strictly, and quickly. The statement seemed to mention the car attack but did not refer to incidents in Wuxi or Hunan. Can the Chinese government ensure the basic safety and security of the citizens, which of course includes financial safety? Will we see more such horrible incidents making headlines? We hope not. On some news now from the UK's royal family, where in a major breach of security, thieves reportedly broke into the grounds of Windsor Castle, which is King Charles's residence in west of London. And that's not it. The thieves reportedly stole 2 vehicles from royal land. According to the police, the incident took place on the 13th of October, but was first reported on Sunday by the British tabloid The Sun. Let's tell you what is known so far. As per reports, in a statement to a US media outlet on Monday, Thames Valley Police confirmed last month's grand theft. The police, in fact, said the burglary was reported at around 11:45 p.m., which is 6:45 p.m. in Eastern Time Zone. What's more, the perpetrators entered a farm building on royal land. The Sun reported that 2 masked men scaled a 6-foot fence to enter the Crown Estate land and reportedly fled the scene in a car and a red cord bike after smashing through a security gate. The police further added that no arrests have been made and an investigation is currently underway. Now, this is a major security breach for the royals and raises concerns about their security. As per reports, Windsor is one of the official residences of King Charles and Queen Camilla, but the pair was apparently not staying at the castle at the time the burglary was reported. However, the Prince and Princess of Wales, Prince William and Kate and their 3 children who live at the Adelaide cottage in the grounds of Windsor Castle were likely to be home on the night of the security breach. This, however, seems to be not the first time that a security breach has been reported in the properties of the royals, and not every time they get as lucky. In the year 2021, on the day of Christmas, a man broke into the grounds of Windsor Castle armed with a crossbow. This was reportedly in an attempt to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II, who was very much in the royal residence at the time. Even as the late Queen remained unharmed, the intrusion sparked serious questions and concerns about palace security, especially after her pleas to summon help fell on deaf ears, as per reports. And in 2023, Jaswant Singh Chel was sentenced to 9 years in jail after he attempted to kill the Queen. Seems the royal palaces are not that foolproof, after all, and need far more robust protective measures, perhaps, to keep security in check. Dubai's inflation rate slowed to its lowest level in 14 months, dropping to 2.4% in October this year, according to data from the Dubai Statistics Center. The decline was mainly driven by a decrease in transport costs, which had fallen in September. This deflation in transport prices reflects ongoing efforts by the UAE government to stabilize the costs amid global inflation pressures. Other areas of deflation included tobacco and communication services, both of which saw moderate price reductions. However, sectors like housing, education, insurance experienced price increases. Housing and utilities saw the largest rise, reflecting continued upward pressure on real estate costs. Education and healthcare also recorded modest price hikes. Despite the increase in some categories, Dubai's inflation remains relatively low as compared to other major global cities. The country's diversified economy, including strong sectors in tourism, real estate, trade, has helped buffer the impact of rising global prices. Falling prices will also boost the country's ambitious plan of doubling the size of its economy by 2033. The UAE Central Bank projects a slight increase in national inflation driven by rising commodity prices, wages and rents. And this also includes personal care, social protection, miscellaneous goods and services sector. Dubai's continued inflation management and proactive economic policies highlight the Emirates' resilience amid global economic challenges, with the government focusing on price stability and sustained economic growth. India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has expressed concern over the ethical and economic challenges faced by content creators due to the rise of artificial intelligence technology. Speaking at a conference, he talked about the growing influence of big tech companies like Google and Meta on the country's digital news media landscape. In fact, the Union Minister highlighted 4 key challenges faced by traditional news media. This includes fake news and disinformation, fair compensation by platforms, algorithmic bias, impact of AI on intellectual property. During his address, the minister also raised questions on the rapid growth of digital media. He emphasized that in a country as diverse as India, tech companies need to take responsibility for the content published on their platform. There have been instances in the past, after all, where the spread of fake news on social media platforms resulted in riots and communal violence. He suggested that platforms must assume more responsibility and see that such content is regulated in the initial process itself.